This is a solution to number 7I and J from the 2.5 worksheet on translations and transformations of functions. We're going to go through this step by step and show how we identify the types of transformations. They can be translations or dilations, which are stretches and shrinks. I'm going to list those, how they affect x and y values, and then we're going to apply those changes to the point negative 2, 5. Okay, so first we'll start with letter I. So here we have both a horizontal stretch and a shift. When we have that, both the horizontal stretch or shrink and a shift, we're going to want to factor out the coefficient of x. So when we factor out the coefficient of x, we'll get 1/3 x plus 12. If you want to check if you factored correctly, you can always distribute the 1/3 back in. So 1/3 times x is 1/3 x, which is what we have, and 1/3 times 12 will be plus 4. So here we have two transformations that are going on. They're both inside the function, so they affect y. And let's see what they do. So we've got, I'm going to get a different color pen. This 1/3. 1/3 is going to be a horizontal stretch by a factor of 3. Remember that whatever we see happening to x inside the function, we're really going to do the inverse of what we see. So that's a horizontal stretch by a factor of 3, which means we're going to multiply x values by 3. And the other thing that we have is this plus 12. Plus 12 is a shift left by 12, which means we're going to subtract 12 from x values. So to summarize that, I like to make a little table. So I'll put the table here. So what we're actually doing to x values is and actually for this problem, we're just transforming 1 point. So we're going to take every x value that we want to do. We're going to multiply x values by 3. And then we are going to subtract 12. And we can do this for as many points as we want. Y values, we're going to do nothing. Okay, there's no transformations that affect y. So if we start with the point negative 2, 5, when we have that horizontal stretch, that's going to give us the point negative 6, 5, multiplying x by 3, and then we're going to subtract 12 from x, so we're going to have negative 18, 5 as our final point. That intermediate point is just to show the steps. Okay, let's take a look at letter J. This problem is a little bit more complicated because we have more transformations going on. I'm going to copy it a little further over on the page so that I have a little bit more room. So let me copy that. In this problem, you'll notice we already have the 4 factored out from the x, so we don't have to worry about doing that step. Okay, so the first thing that we see here is a negative out in front. That's outside the function. That's going to be a reflection in the x-axis. And in terms of what we do to x or y, this means we're going to multiply y by negative 1. Next thing that we have going on is we have this 1/2. This 1/2 multiplies y values. It's outside the function. So in terms of transformations, we would say this is a vertical shrink by 1/2. And the effect is we're going to multiply y by 1/2. The last thing outside the function is we have minus 5. This minus 5 on the outside of the function is a vertical shift down 5, which means we're going to subtract 5 from all our y values. And now let's look at the things inside the function. Inside the function, let's see, maybe I'll get a new color. Inside the function, we have this 4. This 4 represents a horizontal shrink by 1/4. Remember, we do the inverse of everything that happens to x, so we're going to multiply x by 1/4. And the last thing that we have is a minus 3 inside the function. That is a shift right 3, so we're going to add 3 to x. Now I'm going to summarize in terms of x and y, and when I list these values, I'm going to list things that are stretches, shrinks, and reflections first because they're multiplication, and then translations last, okay, separately for x and y. So in terms of x, what are we doing? We're going to multiply by 1/4, and then we're going to add 3. And then for our y values, let me undo that. For the y values, we are going to, I'll write that over here, y values, we are going to multiply by -1 and 1/2. I'll combine those, so times -1/2, and then we have to subtract 5. So we're going to subtract 5. And when we perform all of those transformations, so we start with x times -2, so we would have, -2 times 1/4, which would be -1/2, and then we're going to add 3 to that. So that's going to be 5/2. And y, we're going to start with 5. So 5 times -1/2 is going to give us -5/2. And if we subtract 5 from that, so we'd have -5/2 minus 5, which is 10/2, which will leave us with -15/2.